Welcome. This is Debra Ann Clement, and thank you for joining me for this week's episode of Shortcut to the Soul. Today's topic is money. I thought, let's talk about money in the horoscope, because let's face it, we're all interested in money. We all need money. We all want money. We all have bills to pay, right? Things we want to buy, things we want to experience, and it all takes money. So where do you find the money in the horoscope? Well, there are two houses in the horoscope that speak directly to money. The first is the second house, which we refer to as the house of earned income. Also, we say income and assets. And when we're talking about assets, we are talking about, well, financial assets, but also movable assets. So if you have a lot of real estate, that's the fourth house. It does not fall in the second house. However, if you own a co-op, which is actually, you don't really own the property like you do with a home or with a condo, well, that's actually shares of stock in a corporation. So that will actually go in the second house. But here we're talking about money, and so we'll kind of stick to salary. Now, there's also the eighth house, which we say is other people's money. And we'll get to that in a moment. But when you're looking at money, the first question I think a lot of people ask me is, what is my wealth potential? Right? What's my earning potential? How much money can I possibly earn? Can I be a millionaire, a billionaire? So certainly the wealth potential can be seen in the chart. But the first thing that you want to consider if you're looking for your wealth potential is the source of your wealth, okay? Or let's put it this way, the source of your money. And so is it going to come from a salary? Is it because you are, you're working, say the job, and you've got the salary every 2 weeks? It's sort of reliable, stable. You know that it's replenished. Maybe if you're lucky, you have a pension or a 401k, but all of these assets, but it's connected to your job. Or is the money going to be coming through the eighth house of the other people's money? For example, let's say you're born, in the lucky gene pool, and there are generations of inherited money, and you're a trust fund baby. Well, you're not really you still could be wondering about your wealth potential, but the point is you would be looking at the eighth house. If you marry money, okay, or you hope to marry money, you want to look at the eighth house because that's your partner's money. If you want your own business, all right, what's the wealth potential? Well, most people who are in their own business, while salary can come into play, I'm going to talk about that later, but the eighth house is usually prominent because if you are certainly in a client-driven business, okay, eighth house is client money. So that's important. But it also is money that come through things, intellectual property. If you get money through, patents, right? Royalties, right? Let's say you write, things of that nature. Well, even franchises, eighth house, just connected to eighth house money there. And so, again, second house money, that's your salary. Usually it's fixed. Eighth house money, again, we say it's other people's money. Okay, so let me just go to that a moment. Other people's money. If you win, your source of wealth is going to be through the lottery. That's eighth house money. And it's other people's money in the sense that, yes, you bought your ticket, but so did a lot of other people, right? And so you get that money. Now, if the wealth potential could be very low, maybe someone is on public assistance their entire life. And that may be a fixed amount even, okay? But it's not a salary, and it's coming from the state. It's other people's money. So just to be really clear, just about the difference in the money. And when we go back, I just want to go back here to the second house, because when we talk about money in general, you're going to look at the second house. Like I say, the eighth house may come into play, but the second house is really about money, and that's also, well, it's your attitude towards money, all right? And when I say your attitude towards money, are you a saver? Are you a spender? And when you do spend it, what do you spend it on, right? Some people, maybe you buy jewelry, maybe you buy furniture, maybe you go to spas, maybe you spend it on travel. And what that comes down to, think about this, because the second house in the natural zodiac is ruled by Taurus, the eighth house is ruled by Scorpio. Taurus in the second house, we say, oh, it's our money, it's our income. and it's our values. And what you spend your money on, whether you spend it, whether you save it, and again, what you just necessities or whether you splurge, it all goes down to you. It comes down to your values, right? It comes down to your values. So the thing about the earning, I want to go back. The spending is connected to the values, but what about the earning, the actual earning of the money? Okay, well, think about this. There is a sign on the cusp, right, of the second house, because there's a sign on every cusp. And so when you look at that second house and you look at the sign on the cusp, okay, you're going to consider the sign, its nature, as well as you want to look at that ruling planet. If we're starting with the second house of money, because that's where I would start, all right, and I see that it's a sign, let's say Capricorn is on this, Capricorn or Taurus, for example, or Cancer is on the second house. Generally speaking, those signs like that stability, that security, more interested in having that salary. And when you are talking about the money, and that's why I say the source of the money, we can go a little further and even find out, hey, what type of employment or what type of field are you in? But for right now, you look at that sign on the second house, that's going to say talk about your attitude towards money. And then you're going to look at that ruling planet and you're going to see where it is. What house does it fall in? Okay. Now, let's look at the second house as an example. And let's say Aries is on the second house. And so right off the bat, we might think, okay, Aries, well, the person may spend, right? We say Aries on the second house, money can burn a hole in the pocket. But Aries on the second house can also be someone who usually there's an entrepreneurial spirit, even if they have a salary. Sometimes they, building something up on the side on their own. Maybe someone who is working in a risk-taking, and that's what I'm going to call it, risk-taking, a firefighter, for example. Okay, let's say a firefighter. But at the end of the day, Mars rules Aries. So if we're talking about the money, and if Mars is in Sagittarius, right? Aries is on the second house, Mars is in Sagittarius. When it comes to the attitude towards money and spending, they probably do spend. Because Aries, like I say, on the second, we spend money. There it is in Sagittarius, which can be kind of easy come, easy go. Mars in Gemini as well. But if that Mars is in Taurus or the Mars is in Cancer, person may still spend, okay? But they probably will also save as well. They're not as much as, I don't want to say a spendthrift, but they may not be just as easy come. They may think before they spend, and in some cases, like I say, they may think twice before they spend. So the other thing you would look at and say, well, what house is Mars in? Because I do want to mention that, because if the ruler of the second house, it falls, and let's go with the Mars, let's say it's Mars in Taurus, and it falls in house number 6. Well, I'm seeing Aries on the second house, and I'm seeing it in the 6th house. Well, 6th house is a house of service. It happens to rule civil servants. So I'm just going to say that certainly will make me think, could this be a firefighter? I mean, it's going to take a lot more than that for me to say yes, but I'm just going to give you an example of the process. And even if I'm not sure what they do, having that ruler of the second house of income in the 6th house of service and work, employment, that tends to sell me right there. This person has a job that pays them a regular salary, okay? Because it would look like, where's the income coming from? It's coming from work. The same thing if it fell in the 10th house, it could certainly be through, work, career. But with Aries on the second house and the rule in the 10th house, that person may be their own business, because the 10th house, right? It's also the boss. They may be their own boss. So just some examples. And, if the ruler of the second house was in the 9th house, well, maybe it's a teacher. But at the end of the day, you're going to look at that ruling planet. You're going to look at the sign it's in. That's going to carry some weight as well. But you'll see where it is in the house, and you are going to look at the aspects, because I know I digressed there a moment, but I want to go back to the wealth potential or the earning potential. Okay, let's call it earning potential in this case. So if Mars is in Taurus, and let's say it's in the 6th house, and I say, okay, well, what's the wealth potential here? I want the source of it may be through a job. It may be through, again, some type of service. There are some other things that can come into play as well. But if I'm looking at the ruler of the second house, because that's the money, that's the income, I want to see the aspects to it. So you look at all the aspects. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. You might look and think to yourself, wow, if you want to see all these trines and you want to see all these sextiles, and believe me, you do want to see some flow, absolutely. But if all you have are trines, and especially sextiles, more sextiles than trines, to the ruler of the second house of income, you probably always have enough money. Really, you probably have enough money to pay your bills, maybe take a vacation, and you may actually do very well. But in terms of values, because that second house is values, it's a good chance you feel underpaid, or you feel I should be earning more, I should be further along, okay? And I have not made, I'm falling short of my financial goals. Why? Because when the ruler of the income, house of income, does not have any hard aspects to it. Hard energy, I can't say this enough, hard energy is good. You need hard energy in the horoscope. That's the motivation. That's what pushes us to aspire and to do better. Why? Because that hard energy, especially a square, they are challenging. They are a little frustrating. We're not satisfied. And everything comes from change, all change. Let me put it this way, change and new goals and new ambitions. It comes from dissatisfaction. I'm not happy with the status quo. Whether you're saying I'm changing the color, I would say I'm changing the color of the paint on my wall, or I'm changing my profession, or whatever, if I want to make more money. The bottom line is I'm not happy with the status quo. So that's why I say all change comes from dissatisfaction. All right. So that's why you got to embrace your dissatisfaction. Really, it's your catalyst for change. So when it comes to money, though, in the horoscope, it's not so much that you always want to be dissatisfied. If all you have, if the ruler of the second house of income has nothing but hard energy, well, the person might be very ambitious, okay, and really work hard towards money. Depending on the rest of the chart and the aspects, they can be also dissatisfied and also feel like I'm falling short because I'm not reaching my goals either. And there can be blocks. But the point I want to make is that usually if you see these sextiles or these just trines, you could think like, hey, what's up? What's up with this? Why? I've got Jupiter trining, the ruler of my second house. Like, hey, show me the money. And, with Jupiter, just as, case in point, Jupiter expands what it touches. So it's expanding the ruler of the house of income and earning, right? We could say, yay. But it's also the ruler of the house of spending. So it could be easy come, easy go. You could spend too much. You could, Jupiter is excess. You could spend too much and end up with a debt. So you want that balance. Ideally, you want to have that balance, but it's good to have some type of a hard energy connected to the second house. Now, does it mean that if you just have these trines and sextiles, you're looking at a chart or someone else's chart, and it's like, all right, never going to make their financial goals, or never going to be wealthy? No. What it might be is that second house, when we talk about the salary, let's say investment, savings, things of that nature, that is not going to be the source. That's not totally the source of their wealth potential, okay, or the source of their wealth. So what do I mean by that? I am talking about the 8th house. So not everybody makes their money through a salary. And think about this. If you think about entertainers, athletes, and of course, anyone in private practice, right, with clients, the money is paid, if I've got clients, I'm paid directly. If I'm the best-selling author, it's my royalties, singers, right, whatever, ticket sales. Think of athletes. I mean, they may sign contracts for all this money, but where else do they make their money from? There's a lot of 8th house money because there's endorsements, things like of that nature. Sometimes a lot of money flows through there. So it may be, you may see a very active 8th house. So you look at the 8th house, and what do? Yes, you look at the sign on the 8th house. But here, I'm going to say to you, not so much the sign being important, not that it's not important, but you want to look at that ruler. What is the ruling planet of the eighth house, same process. Where is it? What house does it fall in? Yeah, what sign is it in? And you want to look at the aspects there. And that's where you may see some hard energy with some flowing energy. And that's where you may see more of the, I'm going to say the motivation. And on the note of, even with the eighth house for eighth house income, and here I'm just going to mention entertainers and athletes for a moment, because you may have people who earn their money and we look and we say it's not a salary. Okay, singers, let's say authors, right? We look at it. By the way, bonuses and commissions, that's also eighth house money. So if you're just working, commission pretty much, that's where the source, the bulk of your wealth or your income is coming through the eighth house. And that salary may just be sort of minimal. You cut hair, your wait staff, you may get a certain percentage. Well, actually more with the wait staff, you might get something hourly. But it's really like your tips, right? So the tips are eighth house. So, but to go back, I want to just go back to the, when I say, like let's say your singers or people that we think of, okay, they just get their money paid directly. Now the second house of salary can still come into play. The thing is this, many of them are actually getting a salary. Because when you look at your celebrities, for example, or anyone who's wealthy, but I'm talking about people who are making their money through their business. When they file their income taxes, they're not doing it as like a sole practitioner. They have corporations, right? It might be an LLC, but they have, whether it's a C corporation, whatever the format, they have corporations. And so their money all flows into the corporation. And then at the end of the year, when they file their taxes, depending on the entity, they may get their K-1 for a certain portion of the income, and they may get a 1099 for a salary, because depending on the entity, all right, you have, let's say you're a small business owner, just for the heck of it. You're just starting out in business. You're a small business owner. You have a corporation, small corporation, and you give yourself a salary. You may not do that the first few years when you start a corporation, but eventually you give yourself a corporation. You're the president. How much of the money do you get every year? And so every year you get that 1099. So that's coming through the second house. So that's why I say it could be that money's coming through the second house. The aspects aren't the greatest because that salary, quite frankly, is minimal, because the rest of the money is flowing through the corporation to get some type of a tax break. And so, because at the end of the day, we think of all these tax breaks and these loopholes, and we think of, I hate to say banks, and we think of these big corporations, and it's true. But your billionaire athletes or millionaire athletes and entertainers have the same corporations. And believe me, they get the same tax advantages because their accountants take them, because hey, and if their accountants didn't, it would be some form of, quite frankly, I guess, malpractice. So that's why I say with the eighth house and the second house, there may still be literally a salary coming in, but it might be minimal compared to where the real money is coming from. So I wanted to mention that. Now, when we are talking about, again, the money and the source of the money. So source of money, first of all, to me is it second house? I'm just working for a company, for a job. Am I in my own business? Because I might be self-employed. And again, the money comes probably through the eighth house. Might be a combination of both for some people. There's a salary, they are working. For example, teachers, and I'm just going to say here, I know many teachers here in New York, and they've got private practices now. But they worked for years as a teacher. They retired, right? They put in their time so they can get their Social Security, they can get their pension, their benefits. And then they retired, and now they're starting up a new bit, right? Second stage, second act, and they have their career, and that money, let's say, is eighth house money. So and if they started it, let's put it this way, if they started it before they retired, then there was a second house salary and the eighth house money coming in. Now, on eighth house money, we talk about retirement. All right, so let me mention that. We talk about pensions and things that's connected to Pluto, and it's also connected to Neptune. And here's why. When you retire, you're giving it up, right? I'm done with working. And for many people, it's, right, for some, it's a point of celebration. But you're surrendering. Neptune rules surrender, so you are giving it up. And that's the part of Neptune very often will indicate retirement. If I'm doing someone's forecast and I see certain things, it's like, oh, they're going to be retiring, or they think, right? And Pluto, though, is more about the money. It's more about, the wealth, the resources. And here's the thing when we say other people's income. When you have a retirement plan, even your Social Security, to call it unearned income, right? You've paid into it, right? You've gone out there, you've paid into it. And even if, you haven't put, not every cent is your pension or your 401k, but you have contributed to it. But usually you're putting it in, and the company may be matching it or putting in a certain percent as well. So that's sort of like the other, I'm going to call it the other people's money. Yeah, the other people's money side of it. And so, right, when you really look at the money, it can become really, I was going to say interesting, but certainly, I guess in some ways it could be a little bit complicated. But salary, every 2 weeks getting replenished, that's the second house. Everything else might be a little bit, go more to the eighth house. So if we're talking about the source of the money, where it flows, that's certainly, one part of money. And then you might wonder, well, what is the potential? And that's where I want to go now, the potential. Average money, lots of money, millions. And that's going to be interpreted by, you're going to be looking at all of the aspects in the placement to the ruler of the second house. You are definitely going to also be looking to the ruler of the eighth house. Venus, very important, no matter what, and no matter where it is, Venus does always rule money. So you're going to look at the condition of your Venus, right? Is it retrograde? What house is it in? Is it unaspected? Whatever it may be, you're going to interpret Venus, all the aspects to it. You're also going to say, hey, do you have any planets in your second or eighth houses? Okay, that's something you're going to consider. Now, if you don't have planets in your second or eighth house, it doesn't mean, you're going to be poor, right? The way if your seventh house is empty doesn't mean you're never getting married. But where there are a heavy second house or a heavy eighth house, finances play a bigger role. There's more of an emphasis of them in the lifetime. Now, again, it can be for one reason or another, because depending on the planets, it can be that you're driven to make money, you're interested in money, you are great at making money, and the money just falls, comes in. On the other hand, it might be that money is a challenge. When you've got Saturn in the second house, even if you've got money, very often the person has concerns about money or about not having enough money. Jupiter in the second house, which we all think, God, let's all have Jupiter in the second house. And that's wonderful. The money can come in. But Jupiter is excess. So the money might come in and the money could go out. It will depend on Jupiter, the sign, the aspects to it. Though generally speaking, to be honest with you, Jupiter in the second house is usually a good, usually a good start. But Jupiter in the eighth house, while I think it's wonderful for intuitive gifts and certainly for being a healer, and it can be excellent for bringing in money through, let's say, publishing, right, or media. Eighth house money. Well, eighth house also rules bankruptcy, right? Debt and bankruptcy. So Jupiter in the eighth house, it could be that a lot of money comes to you through lotteries. You could be very fortunate for that. It could be inheritances. It can also, depending on the aspects that it makes and the rest of the chart. I always have to say, right, and the rest of the chart. And it can also be that there's a big issue in life with debt. So another thing, going back to the source of the money, is you might say, well, second house or eighth house, but then what is the field or the profession? Okay, putting aside being a trust fund baby, right, and winning the lottery. If we're talking about a fields, we're talking about professions. So planets in that house, planets in the second house in particular, you would look at the planets, and I'm just going to, it's the easiest example. So I'm going to say, let's say Jupiter. You might right off the bat think, oh, could it be teaching? Could it be law? Same thing if Sagittarius is on the second house. Let's say Mars is in the second house. Okay. Desire to make money, probably, spending money. But with Mars, think about Mars type of professions. So I always think of firefighters first, to be honest with you. But you would think of what professions are ruled. If it's Venus, well, Venus could be law, but Venus might be, an esthetician. So you would look at the planet, and that might give you some insight to it. As far as the sign on the cusp, let me just say this. So you look at the sign of the cusp, the ruling planet. I'm sure I mentioned this already, but what house does the planet of the second house ruler, what house does it fall in? And you blend it, and that's the key. You blend it. One of the things, and for those of you, I know a lot of you who listen to this, because I know some of you could be astrologers. You just haven't gone out there and started yet. And and listen, some of you just love it, and not everybody needs to work at it or is supposed to work at it. But I have to say, and on that note, let me just actually say that in terms of what you see connected, the fields, the professions, that's actually something that's very important, because you can have talent. You can look at a horoscope and there's so much talent, and you say, oh my God. And how many times have you met people, or maybe you've heard of people, and they sing, and you really say to yourself, God, what a voice. They should be on television, or they should have a recording contract. And they just never do. Now you can look and say, well, they don't have the fame indicators in the chart. Fine, they're not meant to be famous. Okay. But there are still people who work, they sing. They may sing in clubs, they may sing on cruise ships, whatever, but they still sing and they earn some money. They may not be making a fortune, but they do get paid to sing. And you can have someone, and no matter what they try, they might be able to sing someplace for free, but they cannot really earn money from it. And I will tell you, promise you this, look at their horoscope, and you will see all that talent, and you'll see the planets that speak to you and say, oh, look at this talent, right, for singing. What is lacking? There is no connection to the planets indicating that talent, showing that talent. There's no connection from the talent to income, whether it's second house or eighth house, I don't care. But there's got to be a connection to income. And that's why a lot of times we have a lot of different gifts, but we're not all meant, to make money at them. And so whether it's intuitive gifts, whether there's artistic, creative gifts, you can be really, blessed with talent. But if it's not connected to money in the chart, you're not earning money. That's not going to be the source of your money. Maybe a tremendous source of satisfaction to you. You may enjoy it, and you may not even be interested, quite honestly, in working for it. But that's something very important. That money connection, we talk about the source, because what is the source? And what we want to do and what we hope, unfortunately, it's just not always connected. So it is, there's a lot of things to look at when we are looking for money in the horoscope. And I do want to mention this. So let's say you've looked at your chart, and you know what? You don't have a lot going on for the money in terms of the potential. Maybe you're lacking some of that hard energy, or maybe you've got a lot of hard energy and it's like, God, I need a trine. Well, all is not lost, because there are transits. And then it becomes very important to pay attention to the heavens. When are they coming some good transit, some nice strong flow, a strong trine from, in particular, maybe an outer planet, because that will last longer. You will also progressions, okay? Not going to go into detail on this, but progressions can make a difference as well. All right, in particular, an aspect from the progressed chart, a progressed planet, to a natal planet. Okay, that's really what I look at, but that will help as well, because things do, it evolves. The chart evolves in that sense. But your natal chart's your natal chart. Your life lessons are your life lessons. If you came into this lifetime and one of your lessons is to learn about money, well, what do I always say? You get a lot of chances to get it wrong. Right? A lot of chances to get it wrong, before you get it right. But second house with the money, the values are always there, even in terms of the profession. Sometimes, let's face it, you can take a job because you have to take a job. But most of the time, if you're taking a job, it's like, well, I want to do this type of work, or I want to work for this particular type of company. And so for me, and I'm just going to say this, right, I'm a Capricorn, I like stability. the idea of, showing up and every 2 weeks having, knowing showing up, I'm doing what I have to do and I've got that money, that is like heaven to me. All right. Really, that's bottom line. That's really basically what my nature is. I have not lived that life. I just have not lived that life. And it was many years ago that I finally, was looking at my chart and I thought sort of like a duh, because when I look at my chart, I don't have that salary. I just don't have that salary going on there. And I'm an example of a chart with the second house ruler that quite honestly, sextiles, trines does not have that hard energy. It comes through the 8th house. And what does it come through? Well, media, client work, intuitive work, the astrology. That's where my money comes from. Also law, I have to say that, because I also had the connection to law and I did earn money. But again, I worked with clients. So, and no matter what you're working in, when you're working, with clients and even the law, it's not like you're paid, for every single thing, right? You bill and then you collect. So it's interesting. It's interesting when you try to follow the money. So for those of you who are really, I'm going to say, familiar with your chart, and this is actually what I was going to say before, you already know this, but for those of you who are, who are still pretty new to it or, learning it, I can't stress enough, you really want to master the 12 houses, what they rule, what they cover, what does each house represent, the relationships in it, the type of relationships, because that's always good for networking too. And also, the life areas, the professions. So I will be doing more on this. I mean, it's such a vast, vocational astrology, right? It's such a big area, but I just wanted to focus a little bit on money for today. And so that actually wraps it up. I am trying to get back on schedule, by the way, with the weekly show. Took a little bit time off, then we sort of missed a week, and it's just been really busy. Honestly, it's been really busy. And I will say this, if you are interested in booking any type of session with me, as we get closer to the end of the year, it gets really busy. I already had dates reserved for clients who want a reading. Let me put it this way. If you're someone who says, I'd love to have a reading in December, I'm going to tell you, reach out soon, because I'm already marking dates for clients that come back every year. So I will mention that to you. And so that wraps it up for this week. And until next time, I'm Debra Ann Clement. I thank you for joining me, and may Jupiter's blessings be your constant companion.
We hope you've enjoyed this presentation. To schedule a consultation, please visit DebraClementAstrologer.com.